Hi, my name is Keith Tenzer, and I've been having a great time exploring a new feature from Anthropic in Claude Code called Dynamic Workflows. I think it can be a game changer. It really removes the human in the loop and lets you perform very complex tasks with Claude that can run for hours or even days. Now, there are a few drawbacks I think that could impact adoption. One is it is limited to 16 concurrent agents or tasks. And the second is crash recovery, or recovery in general, is not automated. Now, I wanted to dedicate this video to exploring how we can improve those limitations and more using Claude and Temporal. And so on the left, I have Claude Code with its dynamic workflows, which are today not temporal. And on the right, I have a reimagined Claude Code, how it could be if it were built on temporal workflows. And we're going to do a head-to-head here and look at the differences. And I've inputted both prompts, and now I'm kicking off Temporal and Claude, as well as Claude Code with dynamic workflows. And I'll be right back when these workflow orchestrations are built and ready to go. All right, and Claude Code has in fact started its dynamic workflow. So I'm going to kick off the temporal Claude workflow. And as you can see on the temporal Claude workflow, we have 22 agents running. There is no limitation to how many we can have in parallel. Now, on the left, Claude Code has a very nice /workflows feature, which lets you follow along. And as you can see here, we do see it's limited to 16, so it's going to queue the rest of them. Again, this is kind of the first limitation that really using temporal gets around. I'm going to let both of these workflows run further, and then I will be back. All right, and as you can see, both are cranking along. On the left, Claude Code has finished 2 of its research tasks. Most of them are already done on the temporal Claude side on the right. And I'm going to do what I love the most, which is crashing applications and bringing them back to life. And so we're going to crash both of these and see how they recover. All right, and I have crashed both. As you can see here on the right, the temporal worker, where it's basically doing all of the processing, is dead. And on the left, I've also done a Control-C, and I have killed Claude. And now I wanted to show you first the recovery in temporal. And here we're looking at the great observability of temporal. As you can see here, all of these agents have completed their research. It's only these 3 really that were in process when we crash things. And if we click into these, you will see here that in fact it sees it's failing, but we do not need to manually recover anything. As soon as whatever was causing the failure is resolved, the workflow will continue. And so we can simply start back our worker, and you will see here that it continues to pick up where it left off, communicating with Claude and Anthropic and progressing this workflow along. And on the Claude side, I did do a Control-C, so it does write some state so it can resume. However, if it was a hard crash and I just went back into Claude here and I did /workflows, it knows nothing about my workflow. Now, the Claude does save a journal, so you can ask it about what dynamic workflows are running. And hopefully, if the journal is intact, it can resume from where it left off. So we will attempt that. All right, and I have asked Claude here to resume the latest dynamic workflow. It appears to have done that, so let's check it out with /workflows. We can see there is the workflow running on the exact subject that we had Unfortunately, though, it does look like it lost its state. It had completed several of these, as we saw, but it's starting them over. I have seen where this works. Of course, if you Control C and then it saves kind of the ID and you resume from that, it would have worked here, but we were simulating a harder crash. Again, I think Anthropic will work out these kinks, but I also think that Temporal is far superior. And if we look at Temporal, we see here that, in fact, there was a problem here with this agent, but we see that it was able to resume execution. It was red. It was having a problem because we killed the worker that was running the process, but as soon as that worker came back online, it was able to resume. Again, if our laptop restarted or some kind of issue that forced a process crash, as soon as that would be started up, it would automatically resume. Whereas Claude, we have to manually recover it. And we saw that even though it wasn't able to successfully do it, at least not in this attempt. At this point, I'm going to run both to completion, and I'll be back with some final thoughts. And as we can see, both have completed. I want to draw your attention to one thing that happened that was interesting on the Claude Code dynamic workflow run. For whatever reason, this research bear thesis failed. And you notice it failed and it stayed failed. There were no retries. On the temporal side, if that had happened, we would have just retried automatically. And so I think it is a big deal that you can go off and do research for many hours or days, and some parts of that may or may not complete or be incomplete. On the temporal side, that will never happen. So that is a big, big, big advantage in respect to durability. All right, and the last thing I wanted to look at before we get to the results is the usage. You can see here, Temporal Cloud is very targeted. It had 251,000 in and 104 out tokens, so that is maybe, I don't know, $4 or $5. And on Claude side here, Claude Code that is, we have /usage. And you can see here, it used quite a bit more tokens. Granted, we had to restart it from scratch when we crashed, so that invoked quite a lot more tokens. But nevertheless, I have heard people complain about that, and I think using Temporal is a much more targeted way for Claude to achieve results. And as you would expect, the results both are pretty much saying avoid overvalued. So those of you planning on investing in SpaceX, probably best to just wait and see and not invest at these levels. So in summary, again, I love the feature and where Anthropic is going with dynamic workflows. I think it really needs to be backed by something durable. Temporal is, in my opinion, a great candidate and great fit. If you're interested in that and what durable Claude workflows could look like, I've linked the code repo, which is literally a couple hundred lines of code for what we saw on the right with Temporal. And you're welcome to experiment with that. And I do hope Anthropic considers that as a future improvement. Thank you for your time. I hope it has been valuable.